A big change for WWE as Friday Night SmackDown gets a new head writer. All this while Shane McMahon's contract status with WWE is revealed. And I'm going to tell you why it's very well possible that he could be all elite. All this and much more coming up right here in this video. Be sure to smash that like button, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you get notified whenever a new video is released. All right, let's first talk about the big changes for WWE, particularly on Friday Night SmackDown. SmackDown is, of course, WWE's highest rated show at the moment. And honestly, it is arguably their most important show. And FightfulSelect.com has come out with a new report where they outline a major change at the top of the pecking order on that show. Here it is, FightfulSelect.com, best $5 in the business. Here's the quote from their article. Fightful Select Sean Ross Sapp learned that longtime WWE creative writer John Swikata has been promoted to lead writer of WWE SmackDown, at least as of earlier this week. We were able to confirm the news with numerous people in the company. Swikata replaces Ryan Callahan in that role, who we're told parted ways with WWE. Swikata, again, has been a longtime writer for SmackDown, or for WWE, but seeing him rise up in the ranks in WWE to be the head writer of SmackDown really marks another change in the Triple H era. We've seen Triple H kind of take out a lot of people who were long-time, tenured people in their positions in WWE, the biggest one of that being Kevin Dunn, and replacing them with essentially his guys. And I think this is something that we knew we were going to see more and more. Arguably, the biggest domino in that has fallen with Kevin Dunn. The show, all WWE shows, feel different. They feel bigger. They feel better. They feel better, more well-produced because Kevin Dunn is gone. And many people have always said that, wow, Kevin Dunn, he revolutionized the game in pro wrestling. He defined how you were supposed to have this show feel. And the reality is Kevin Dunn was a revolutionary for his time. The issue is his time ran out about 15, 20 years ago. The time of all these camera cuts where people couldn't work and you had to hide the wrestling, that time is up. You have people who are more well-coordinated than they've ever been in professional wrestling, more athletic than they've ever been in professional wrestling, and way better at doing their jobs in the ring, I should say, in professional wrestling. That is just true. And you don't need to hide things as much. You need to make it seem bigger and make it seem like it's a big deal. And add that little bit of dramatic element that they've done. I love what WWE is doing with these solo camera shots, these, following people through the back and then on the entrance. It's honestly become a very iconic shot. You could argue that, maybe in a year and a half, it's going to get pretty old. But I look to WWE and Triple H's regime particularly to kind of evolve with the time, something that Vince McMahon's regime rarely ever did, especially from a production standpoint, right? So that's what I'm going to be looking for. And look no further than this change with Swikata becoming the lead writer on SmackDown. We saw this past week SmackDown being, I believe, the first one under this new regime, this new head writer, and it felt different than previous week SmackDowns. It felt like this was a must-see show, and it was written as if you are tuning into a continuous storyline throughout the night. And remember, when SmackDown was at its best, especially a few years ago with the Bloodline stuff, it was largely because they had that big continuous storyline going throughout the entire night. So for me, and what I'm looking for in the future for Friday Night SmackDown is more of this. And if they keep on doing this, they're already the highest rated show on North American television as far as professional wrestling goes. I think they could even maintain that once they go over to USA Network, just given how absolutely awesome the show has been, or the show was this past week. If they continue to do that, I think. But we'll see what happens there. There's a lot that's TBD, especially in WWE, as we've seen throughout the years. But let me know what you guys think about this in the comment section as we move on to our next topic. And this is one that I know many of you guys want to talk about. Let's talk about the one, the only Shane O'Mac, as I pull up the correct graphics. We've, as you can see, had a bit of a change in the studio as of late, so making do with what we got. But big news, big update on Shane McMahon potentially joining All Elite Wrestling. The speculation has been running rampant ever since Dave Meltzer of the Wrestling Observer newsletter stated that there was interest, and McMahon had reached out to some people in AEW about, hey, look, you never know what can happen. And ever since then, we've been trying to get, news on what's going on. Well, again, FightfulSelect.com, best $5 in the business. That's what Sean Ross Sapp likes to say, at least, and I happen to agree with him. But FightfulSelect.com had a report out, and here are some excerpts from that report that I really think are interesting. In an update on the Shane McMahon AEW rumors, says, quote, those that we've spoken to say that Shane McMahon hadn't been brought up at a high level. Next quote says, McMahon himself has spoken to others about the possibility of it and didn't seem opposed to it happening. However, prior to this week, it wasn't a topic of conversation within AEW. It also goes on to say, in another quote, though Shane appeared at WrestleMania last year, he no longer has a contract, of any kind with WWE, including a talent contract, Legends contract, or anything of that sort. So essentially, the big news out of this is, while Shane McMahon and AEW have not had talks, while Shane McMahon and AEW, before this week hadn't really even given it like a serious thought, Shane McMahon is no longer in any capacity signed with WWE. Now, this was to be expected. We have not seen Shane has not really had much to do with WWE ever since the Royal Rumble 2022. That was the infamous story that I believe Fightful Select also broke. Go over to FightfulSelect.com for the full stories. But the story was basically that Shane had booked that 2022 Royal Rumble, and that has gone down to be one of the worst Rumbles in WWE history. And one of the consequences was that Vince McMahon allegedly said that Shane McMahon would never be in WWE again. And as long as he's around, he would never have anything to do with WWE. And he followed through on that promise, and Vince was only around for another 6 months or whatever because scandals broke. But it is interesting that, we live in a weird timeline in wrestling, and I'd argue the most exciting. Think about what's happened over the past number of years. You've had CM Punk come back, go away, brawl out, brawl in, leave AEW, go back to WWE, and everything in between. The rise of AEW, all these free agents going back and forth, things, career resurgence, all this cool stuff has happened in pro wrestling. And I think it's part of the reason why I always say, we are currently living in the most exciting era of pro wrestling, because it legitimately feels like at any point, at any time, anything can happen. And we are getting week in, week out some of the best pro wrestling that we've ever seen. And I think a lot of that has to do with companies like AEW doing well, like GCW getting a pretty big following and a great cult following, like TNA doing a partnership with WWE, things that we never would have thought were possible. And I would put this right up there on that list. I'm going to be real with you. The idea of Shane signing with AEW is preposterous. It is absolutely insane. But then again, so is everything else that has happened in pro wrestling over the last number of years. You can't tell me with a straight face that Shane McMahon appearing in AEW is any more or less insane than what happened with CM Punk. You can't tell me that Shane McMahon potentially joining AEW is any more or less insane than the power struggle that we had in WWE over the past few years, with Triple H being booted out of power in NXT, essentially blackballed from the company, only to have Vince McMahon scandal break and then Triple H come back into power and be named the chief creative officer. None of that was in the cards. No one could have predicted that. No one could have predicted the rise of AEW in the way that it did. And it's for that very reason I would argue that Shane McMahon to AEW is not the craziest thing that would happen. I think that we're still a long ways off, but if it did happen, I'm telling you right now, for whatever people want to say. People are going to say, like, it's a short-sighted thing, whatever. If you have the right story behind it, if you are able to present it in a way that feels big, that warrants this, and doesn't make it just an attention-grabbing thing, I think there's money to be made here. And I ain't just saying that because his name is Shane O'Mac. Here comes the money. Nah. I'm saying this because there is that obvious tie-in. Like, whether or not people are always going to make the comparison of, well, anyone who's ever had a cup of coffee in WWE, AEW just wants. Reality is AEW wants talent. WWE want talent. Doesn't matter where they come from. It doesn't matter, how long they were in WWE, how associated they were. If they are good talent, if they're going to help you with the ratings, if they're going to be entertaining on TV, and they fit into their storylines, you should get them. I think there's definitely a fittable storyline with Shane McMahon leading an insurgency in AEW and potentially taking over the company. You can't tell me that an invasion storyline in AEW wouldn't work with Shane McMahon being the invading force. Because if done right, they could right the wrongs of the original invasion, which we all agree. I don't think there's anyone out there who thought that invasion storyline was good in 2001, right? But at the same time, I think, we were well far off from that. But, sometimes it just takes something like this. Sometimes it just takes a little bit of smoke, a little bit of speculation to turn something like this into reality. We'll see what happens there, but Shane McMahon, All Elite, not yet, but I'm just saying, don't count it out. Let me know what you guys think, though, in the comments section below. Do you think Shane McMahon will join All Elite Wrestling? Will he not? Will he just fade away and, like Scrooge McDuck, they jump in a swimming pool full of money? Let me know in the comment section below. Also, if you haven't already done so, do me a big time favor. Smash that like button, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you get notified whenever one of our daily videos is released. I'm going to be headed to AEW Forbidden Door this week. I also may or may not stop by at the Madison Square Garden SmackDown. It's just ironic. There's a WWE event on Friday, an AEW event in New York on Sunday. I will probably be at both. Definitely will be at Forbidden Door. But let me know what you guys, or if you guys are going to be there. Let me know what matches you guys are excited for on either card. Again, I'll probably be at both. But and if you're there, if you're going to be there, be sure to swing by and say hi to this guy. Until next time, guys, be happy, be healthy, and as always, keep it real.